भैरवी जनरञ्जनी रसिक प्रिय वरमूलियवीं श्री सरस्वती मनोहरि भैरवी.
Namaskarams to all of you. On behalf of Paalam, I take great pleasure in welcoming you all to a very unique Legdom festival, ANUBHAV, which is precisely and mainly for Rasikas to understand, appreciate and enjoy our performing arts better. We have very renowned and scholarly distinguished personalities who will be participating in this festival and sharing their valuable views on various subjects. Today, we are very happy to have with us Maestro Chitravina N.Ravikiran. Please give him a big hand and welcome him. He is here to talk to us about Sangeetha Anubhavam. A few words about Shri Ravikiran before I hand over the mic to him to take over the session. Chitravina N.Ravikiran, since his grand entrance at the age of 2, has been one of the most inspiring ambassadors of Indian music, and the substance and quality of his contribution as an instrumentalist, composer, vocalist, guru, author, and orator are held in the highest regard. He is also the inventor of the award-winning world music concept called Melharmony, which is the bridging aspects of the Indian music system with the Western harmonic system. And he's also a very illustrious composer, having composed about 700 compositions. I don't know the latest, how many have been added after that, this is the information I have, including full-scale operatic dance productions as well. And he's one of the first musicians to have composed a set of compositions in each of the 35 talas. And he's the founder of the International Foundation for Carnatic Music, which aims to promote Carnatic music all over the world. And his insights into music are truly enlightening and inspiring. And for every Rasika and student, including myself, it has been a process of discovery. And every time he's on stage, he's always there to share something very special for us. And today, we thought, as the debut of this whole session, I requested him to give us an enlightening talk on Sangeetha Anubhavam, that is about the entire form, content of Carnatic music, what our system of Carnatic music is all about and what it tends to communicate to the Rasikas. And as per our plan, around 1.5 hours he'll be taking to enlighten us about the subject. And then we have earmarked about half an hour for the audience session. And I'll come back to you for the audience questions once the session is over. Once again, I take pleasure in welcoming Chitravina N.Ravikiran. Namaskaram.
Good evening and New Year greetings to all of you. It's indeed a great pleasure for me to be taking part in this excellent initiative that Mudra has undertaken to start talking about the Anubhavam, the experience part, the experience that all of you doubtless feel whenever you listen to a concert, whenever you see artists, whenever you listen to recordings or hear even discussions about the subject. Now, this is a fantastic subject. The Sangeeta is a term that in Indian classical parlance, it encompasses almost everything that is there to be talked about. Because it doesn't only mean melody. It's not only a very narrow term to only denote melody in our context. The whole experience of the music as such. In Carnatic, which without any exaggeration is probably the most complete, consummate melodic system that I have been a part of. Because I can say this, I often say this, that this is only an intellectual statement because I have collaborated with Western classical, jazz, which are harmony-centric systems. And then you have, on the other hand, so many other systems like Chinese, Brazilian, Middle Eastern, African, and so many other excellent systems of music in the world. And I have had the privilege of working with top artists and orchestras of many of these fantastic systems. And each is beautiful in its own way. So you cannot really compare them one against the other. But in an objective way, what I have seen is Carnatic's approach to music as a melodic system is probably the most complete, because it's like a huge shopping mall. You have everything within that spectrum. You have on one hand melody, and then rhythm, then you have lyrics, excellent literature in so many different languages of great, not only great poets, but also great philosophers, spiritualists, and those kind of composers who are adept at music, culture, and so many dimensions of philosophy and spirituality. And for them, they were also, the greatest composers were not merely scholars, they were also inspired composers. They were inspired creators. So, if you have scholarship without inspiration or inspiration without scholarship, the composition will not be complete. You need both in order to actually reach the highest levels of composing. So these kind of quality composers are there in our system who made this system richer by the kind of compositional forms. You see the musical forms that you talk about, you have such a huge variety of forms, right? From the Geetam and Swarajitis and the practice kind of forms till the concert forms like Varanams, Kritis, Tilanas, Javalis, Padams and so forth. And then you have the devotional forms like Tevaram, Tiruppugal and so many other kind of Divya Prabandhams, and then you got so many other folk kind of forms as well. So you have so many varieties within that. And now recently, of course, Carnatic with its inclusive nature has also taken and made its own a lot of the bhajans and abhangs and Bengali tunes and so many other things. So Carnatic is a very, very complete system in itself. And then, so you are talking about melody, rhythm, lyrics, and then you are talking about the balance between the compositions and improvisation. Very few systems have this equal balance. If you take, for example, Western classical, it's going to be 99% of compositions. You rarely find improvisation in recent times. There was a time when people like Mozart were known to be very good as improvisational artists also. But in recent times, Western classical is more composition reliant. And if you take something like jazz or Hindustani classical, you will see almost 90 to 95% is improvisation. So there is very little of compositional form in that. But Carnatic, if you take, it's like 50-50 balance. In an ideal concert, you will actually see almost a 50-50 balance between these compositions and improvisation. This makes it very special. And then on the other hand, you also have other distinctions. Now, for example, it's not merely an aesthetic system. It's also a very, very sound theoretical system. The kind of theories that have been developed in Carnatic music date back to more than 2000 years, either in the Sanskrit culture of people like Bharata and others of those times, or the Tamil culture, where you also had equally brilliant scholars who actually developed the fundamental theories of Carnatic music, what has become Carnatic music subsequently. In other words, it has taken the best of the Sanskrit as well as the Tamil culture and merged them into its own, which is why you have got such excellent treatises of Carnatic from both the north and the south. You cannot find this kind of balance in almost any system in the world, And then, if you are looking technically, you are having such beautiful concepts like the 35 talas or the 72 melakartas. These are all mathematically very sound concepts based on permutation and combinations. And that can be explained and understood and appreciated by any scholar in any part of the world, which is one of the reasons that Carnatic is very popular even among musicologists and music theorists in other parts of the world, ethnomusicologists. They are able to easily relate to a lot of the Carnatic concepts because of its very sound, rational approach to grammar and theory and history and also. Now, on the other hand, if you come to the rendition part of it, Carnatic is a fantastic system which gives equal importance to both the plain notes as well as oscillated notes. The kind of unique ornamentation that you will see in the oscillation, which is like very distinctive from the oscillations you may see in some of the other systems, like in jazz and other things, you may have kind of different kinds of pitch bending and other kinds of portamento and so forth. Here in Carnatic, the oscillation that you have is again very distinctive from what you have as the glide, that is more the main anchor point of Hindustani music, the mean as they call it. So, a good artist will have to be skillful in all these areas to be appreciated and regarded as a complete artist. So, in other words, you have to be aware of all these things, and as a good listener, you should also be able to look at the whole beautiful multi-dimensional view of this system when you are appreciating music, and you will be able to see each artist will be able to bring certain specialities to the table. Some may be very good in Naraval, some may be very good in Kalpanaswaram, some may be very good in Alapana, some may be very good in Dikshita composition, some others may be fantastic in Kshetrajna Padams, and so forth. But in the whole spectrum, if you are having a 10 or 20-day festival, you will be able to get insights into all these aspects of music, especially if you are also going to have scholarly talks like the ones that Mudra is organizing now. So you will get the theoretical and the practical aspects of music as well. So, with this kind of background, now let's actually start going slightly to the Anubhava part of it. So there are so many aspects of music that can really give you different kinds of Anubhavas. And today I am only giving a bird's eye view of most of these Anubhavas. The Anubhava part of it is something that is very, very, very essential. With all the background that I gave about Carnatic from the intellectual perspective, it is really one of the most aesthetically pleasing systems that the world has seen. I can again say this objectively with personal experience, because today if I'm going to be performing a concert in Slovenia or Hungary or Japan or New Zealand or Brazil or for any international festivals for audiences who have never heard of Carnatic music, the music by itself is still capable of being appreciated and capable of eliciting excellent response from any kind of listener, from any age group, any culture, by its own merit. And this is phenomenal because Carnatic music has all these aspects. A typical Carnatic concert with a fantastic balance of the compositional forms and the improvisation and different kinds of compositions rendered in a particular order, which has been said by great masters like Aryakudi Ramanjayar and others, by itself is able to attract listeners throughout the world. And without compromising an iota of the Carnatic's core values, I've been able to see that audiences in the world have been able to appreciate the system for its core beauty. Because there are certain systems like Hindustani music where the progress of the music is more linear. You will start slow and from low. So you will start slow and then go high and then fast. So it's a very, very structured approach to many of the compositions in Hindustani music. So you always have that kind of beginning that is very measured in Hindustani music, where everybody is internalizing that particular thing and then going forward in a fantastic manner. So it actually starts from the internal to the external. So then it sort of gets more and more thrilling as it goes on. Whereas the Carnatic form has a lot of short compositions. The short composition sometimes is very, very similar to some of the short compositions you will see in Western Classical and some of the other systems as well. So this kind of short compositions is equally attractive to global listeners. So it's one of the most globally appealing systems that I have seen, just by the way it's done. And then you also have the ability to improvise, and then you have so many different kinds of structured and unstructured improvisation in Carnatic music. Some of the Kalpanaswarams and Naraval and all that will be in the structured time, whereas the free-flowing, free-form improvisation like Alapana and Thanam, which is more semi-rhythmic but without a cyclic talam, can also be equally thrilling. So, when you are having this kind of a system, each of you who is here today may sit in the same concert but feel different experiences based on what is your wavelength. Life is about wavelength. If you are tuned in to my wavelength, we are on the same page, obviously, right? So, if you are not in that wavelength, if you are not tuned into that particular wavelength, I could be having the biggest towers and broadcasting, screaming myself hoarse. But if you are not in that particular channel, then you will actually be watching some other channel at that time. So you will be somewhere else. So the main thing is, we cannot expect homogeneous audiences in any concert. It's actually an impractical expectation. So unless it's a thematic concert like what Mudra has been doing for so many years, they keep coming up with so many beautiful themes, and particular set of niche listeners who are particularly keen about that theme can actually come. So you will have more fairly homogeneous audiences in those kind of concerts. But in a typical concert, you don't really expect to find homogeneous audiences. And that's why Carnatic actually has this, approach of completeness and proportion, variety, contrast. In its whole inbuilt way, this concert structure has been evolved. And of course, I'll talk about that more at leisure. But coming to this thing, irrespective of what your individual preferences are, the basic thing about the taste of listenership is what the Anubhava is actually going to be dependent on. And taste is such a generic term. What is good taste? Nobody can actually probably agree with it. But in general, the whole experience of many of art has tended to define taste as a journey from the gross to the fine, from the macroscopic to the microscopic, from the obvious to the subtle, from the dramatic to the suggestive, from the exuberant to the restraint. And any listener who is able to start out as a very refined listener is already in a very good plane. Typically, those kind of listeners are respected even by musicians. Musicians of those kind of levels would really love to perform for such listeners who will be able to appreciate every subtlety that they do on the stage. As once Palghat Maniyar mentioned, it will be impractical to expect the audience to be with you 100% of the time. It's going to be very difficult because many times on the stage what we perform sometimes will not be obvious to you in our fellow artists because the art is so huge. And when it comes to improvisation, you are going to be doing so many things that is pretty unpredictable. And it's each person would have specialized in a particular way. So it's very difficult even for artists to keep pace and appreciate all that is happening on the stage. But as and when we are able to do this, and we keep training our ears and training our mind and come with the right approach, then we'll actually have to start looking for those subtleties, start looking for the subtle beauties of this thing. Everything need not be always suggested dramatically for us. It doesn't have to be an on-your-face kind of Shruti Bedam, for instance. It doesn't have to be your on-your-face kind of mathematical chorway. It can be a lot of subtle things. It doesn't have to be on-your-face kind of fast, super fast kind of singing all the time. All those still are very important. Don't get this wrong. Whatever I'm saying is contextual. So, so everything is important. Everything has its sense of place. Now, for example, if you actually go to a temple, the fantastic Gopuram that is there, the Raja Gopurams, are as important as the Sanctum Sanctorum. So everything has its own place, and every Prakaram has its own role in this temple of fine arts, so to speak. So this doesn't mean that something is less than the other one. Sometimes the Gopuram is the one which actually draws you to the Sanctum Sanctorum eventually. So like this, art also, the beautiful, breathtaking splendor of a super fast kind of Sangati can later on draw you to a very subtle, beautiful, microscopic, nuanced rendition of a Kshetrajna Padam. Later on, we may be able to graduate to those kind of things. So this taste is something that all of us go through this process. Even musicians. Musicians also, when we set out, we don't really start most of the times being able to appreciate like that. We also learn a lot of the basics, we start talking to great artists, we start seeing what the art is about. Even to go to the depth of the art, it can take a lot of time. And when you only go to explore the peaks, sometimes we may end up missing the depth. So we have to be aware of both. And as musicians, as rasikas, if we are all trying to do the same thing as a basic approach, then all of us will be able to further the art, because each will be motivating the other to do better and better, taking ourselves higher in the plane all the time. And this is the responsibility of the listeners as well as the artists, to be able to try to explore the very depths of the art. And that is where the Anubhava keeps coming into play. And so, when we look at Carnatic music, specifically, let's actually look at the beautiful aspects of melody, rhythm, and explore a little bit of each. Melodically, if you see, the concept of raga is probably one of the best melodic contributions of Indian music to the world. It's a fantastic concept. The scales, the modes, the manner in which they have been studied. If you actually look at it, many of these ragas were evolved much earlier than the concept of even Melakartas and other things were proposed. The Melakarta concept is probably 400, 500 years old. The way it refined was even later than that. So about 300, 250 years is when it started getting more refined. But if you look at this concept of Melakartas, intellectually, Sarigama Padani Sasanida Pamagares. So if you are looking at the very first Mela, Kanakangi, the way in which it has been arranged is all the ragas have been split into two tetrachords, Sarigama and Padanisa, in a very scientific manner, and then all the possible permutation combinations of the notes which are meaningfully in a chronological order have been grouped together to create these 72. So you have 3 varieties of Re in Carnatic, 3 varieties of Ga, 3 varieties of Da, and 3 varieties of Ni, and 2 varieties of Ma. So if you are going to be having permutation and combination of all this, you will end up with this magic number of 72. And that's why we have this 72 parent scale concept. Now many of these ragas which actually fall into the 72 were evolved much before. For example, Karagarapriya, Harikambodhi, Kalyani, some of these ragas definitely predated this concept, but they still fit into this 72. For your information, these fundamental scales like Shankarabharanam, Kalyani and Harikambodhi and all this have been there even in Western classical, medieval music and those kind of times, because these are all based on laws of physics. Many of these combinations you'll be able to get from just playing sa to pa all the time. If you just play sa, pa, re, then that re to pa is going to be da. Like that, if you just keep going in cycle of fifths or cycle of fourths, you'll be able to get some of these fundamental scales. So, in Carnatic music, the twist that was added to this fundamental 12 notes is that Shuddha Gandharam, Shuddha Nishadam will be the same as Chatushruti Rishabham and Chatushruti Daivatam. That means the Re 2 and Da 2, the second variety of Re and the second variety of Da will be the same as the first variety of Ga and Ni respectively. Similarly, the third variety of Re and Da will be the same as the second variety of Ga and Ni respectively. So, this was done to make this permutation combination more exhaustive. Now, for example, Sa re ga ma pa ma ga re sa, sa re re ma pa ma re re sa. Instead of saying that second thing as re itself, you are just giving it as ga. So, sa re ga ma pa da pa ma ga ma pa ma re sa ne. It's actually da. Ma ga re sa da. But it's pronounced as ni in this context. So, same thing with Natai if you take. If you actually look at this in Hindustani, they will only call it as ga only. They will actually visualize this as a raga with two gandharams. They won't visualize it as the sharp second. Actually, Western classical music does that. Western classical actually has a double sharp third or a sharp second and so forth in its notation system. So, I have been working with Western as well as Eastern. So, in that I have discovered a lot more similarities between these two systems than what may appear at the surface level, including the way in which some of the notations are done. So, coming back to this, the concept of 72 Melakartas is such a beautiful one. A lot of you may be aware of this term called Vivadi Ragas. The Vivadi Raga concept is something that actually has notes which are only one semitone apart, of which the middle one is not either sa or pa. That means so re is the middle note in that three sum, right? Padani, again da is the middle note. So these kind of ragas where the ga is the middle note, padani, dani sa, ni is the middle note. So like this, these kind of ragas are known as Vivadi Ragas in a very simple sense. That means any raga with Shuddha Gandharam, Shuddha Nishadam, Shatshruti Rishabham and Shatshruti Devatam are considered Vivadi. Now, in Western term, the equivalent term for Vivadi is dissonance. So these kind of ragas will create a dissonant Anubhava in the listener. When you render this for a long time, it will actually be a dissonance. Kind of thing, if you just keep continuously rendering this for a long time, it will start creating more and more dissonance and a sort of a disturbing feeling. Dissonance is not bad by itself, okay? Don't think of dissonance as a negative thing. Dissonance can be used as a tool by composers or musicians to create a change in the whole mood. But you cannot overdo this. So, sometimes composers will deliberately choose this kind of ragas to just bring a contrast in the concert. But in Carnatic, what happens is, this dissonance is beautifully nullified often or minimized by the oscillation. That's why if you take a look at some ragas like Natai, you are actually oscillating the dissonant note, the Shatshruti Rishabham. If you don't oscillate this, it will actually sound even much more dissonant. Kind of thing, if you just keep on doing, it will actually start sounding more and more desolate and you will keep wondering, when is this guy going to stop? Many times, if you see in film music, these kind of notes will be used to create mood just before the ghost is walking into the horror scene, So, that is what dissonance actually does. It creates immediately if you see most of the movies, it's a music that will actually lead you into what is going to happen even before the dialogues or the visuals come into play. The music will already set the tone for what's going to happen. With the music, you will be able to know, okay, something is disturbing is going to happen now, or something cheerful is going to happen. So in other words, I have often asked people to conduct this experiment. I have always believed that the most powerful sensory organ is actually the ear, more than the eye. A simple experiment which you can all conduct is, watch a horror movie with your eyes closed. You will still be able to perceive at least 80% of the horror that's happening over there. Whereas if you watch the same horror scene with your thing on mute, the volume on mute, most of what actually appears horrible will actually start appearing almost comical. Watch this and you will be able to see what I mean. It's most of the times the ear that really gives you that mood. It sets the tone. It sets your mind already on the alert for what's going to happen. So in Carnatic, the beauty of this oscillation, which is what one of the most defining distinctive features of Anubhava in Carnatic is the oscillation, the kampitam. And kampitam is the root of Carnatic's very individuality. There are ragas which cannot even be imagined without that kampitam. Appadinada enna ragam? It doesn't need the arohanam, avrohanam, it doesn't need the whole 9 yards for you to even identify what's a raga. It's just one phrase. And where is the distinction from that phrase coming? Appadina and the riya vandu anga asachitha udane vandu you are able to get that sahana on the plate. So, when you are actually looking at that அப்படின்ன உடனே ஆனந்த பைரவி. So the way in which that sagariga அப்படின்னா then it can be any raga, not by just the sequence. So the beauty of that, the way in which that note அப்படின்னா you can easily eliminate Shankarabharanam from that equation. You can eliminate almost all the Shuddha Madhyamam from that equation just because the ga was oscillated. So in other words, the oscillation is not merely a mood creator, it's also a show of intent. Moment I oscillate it with that greater amplitude, you will know that the next note is not going to be something below this. You will already know my intent of what I am going to do even before I do that. And so that oscillation is indicative of intent. So for very, very good listeners, as you keep listening more and more, you will start coming more and more with the artist just by being aware of this wonderful concept of oscillation, the kampitam. The Carnatic oscillation is very different, as I said, from many other systems that I have been a part of. And now if you look at this raga, Riga ma ba ma ga ma ri ga ga ri sa ri ga ma ba ma da ni sa ri da ni sa da ni da ba da ni da ba ma ni da ba ma da ba ma ba da ba ma ni da ba ma ba da di da ba da ba ma ba ma ba ma ba ma ba da ba ma ba da ba ma ni da ba ma da ni da da ni da ba ma ni da ba ma ga ma ri. If I am going to do, I can be doing this till the cows come home, but the raga won't have come even halfway home. So, what actually makes that? Da ni da pa ma sa ni da pa ma. That ni, the moment I oscillate it in that particular way, it will actually bring sahana. Sa ni da pa ma ga ma re re ga ma pa ma ga ma re ga re sa ni fa re re ga ma pa ma da re ni da pa ma. So that oscillation is what this raga thrives on. It's like oxygen for this raga. If you take a list of ragas like Yadugala Kambodhi, Deva Gandhari, you cannot imagine them without these oscillations. In other words, these are extremely dependent on oscillations. Now, that means they cannot exist without those oscillations. Ahiri, Nilambari. And these kind of ragas are the Rakti ragas. So the moment you hear these ragas, you don't even need them to be rendered for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, like some Ghana ragam like Todi or Kalyani and all that. In fact, they can even bring that Rasa Anubhava within 1 or 2 phrases. Within a couple of phrases, if they are rendered in such sublime beauty, the whole hall will go gaga. Even though you may be playing some other note. But the main thing is, there are other ragas in Carnatic music which have oscillation, but they are not that dependent on it for their survival. ga da pa ga re ne sa re ga ga ma pa da ni da ba ma ga ma pa ma ga re ne sa re ra mo lo sa ge bro chute. Now if you take Keeravani, you have beautiful oscillations in this, as you saw. Ga ma pa da pa ga re ne sa re ga re ga re da ne ga re ga ne re ga re ga da ne re ga ga re ne da ne re ne da ne re ne re da ga re ga ne re ga pa ga re ne sa re. If you now again, I didn't oscillate the ga at all, but still the raga is able to bring that rasa. Re ga ma pa da ni da ba ma pa da ni pa da ma pa da ma ni pa da ma sa ni da ni pa da ma pa da ni ri da ni da ba ma ga ma da ba ma ga re da ni da re ga re. So with very minimal oscillation, the raga can still survive. But da da ba ba pa da ba ma pa da ba ba ma ga ma pa ma ga ma pa ma ga re da ni da re ga da pa ga re ne sa. The moment you do that, it brings a different kind of emotion. So you can see how many different colors can be brought by the handling or non-handling of the oscillation in some of these ragas like Keeravani. So then you have the other kind of ragas which have very low tolerance for this oscillation. You cannot over-oscillate a Hindolam like a Hindolam ga or ni like you can do with a Todi ga or ni, even though technically the notes of Hindolam are just a subset of Todi. Sa ga ma ga ma da ni sa da ma da ga ma ga sa da ni sa. Very minimal oscillation only. Ga, it's almost on itself. Ga ga ma ga ma, you can't do that. Ga ma ga sa ga ma ga da da ni sa ga ma da ni da da. Again the note is on itself. Now if you take that same da that moment to do that slightly more, it will come off to pa and then it will become a totally different raga. There I am saying da, but I am actually singing pa for most of the time. Only next Sangeet you will actually go more to the da. Whereas that will start a little more on the da itself. But whereas the Hindolam da, so see the same note but handled so differently. Now if you take ni, ga ma da ni sa ni ga sa da ni sa ni sa da ni ma da ga ma da ni sa. So again you see either the plain ni or minimally oscillated ni. It's almost like the Western tremolo actually. The trill, tremolo kind of feel you'll have to get in this kind of notes. Da ni sa ni da ma da ga ma da ni sa. So Hindolam is more this raga which has almost like Ardha Kampitam. If you actually go to Musicologist, they'll be able to give the technical names, reel off the names for all of these things. But deliberately I'm not doing this because I'm trying to demystify these terms rather than make it more complicated for your Anubhava now. So the main thing is the way in which these notes are rendered have a huge impact on your listening pleasures or listening experience. Ga ma da ni sa da ni sa So when you have this kind of long phrases with just the plain notes with minimal gamakams, you have a different kind of experience. Now as opposed to that, When you are hearing the same kind of set of notes with the one or two additions in Todi, it's again a different kind of experience. So how we can create so many different experiences, moods, how important that oscillation is also there, and the way in which the voice is given, the way in which the dynamics of the music works. That is a very, very important point of listener experience. I'll come to that, but before that, any questions if you have, then I'll probably be happy to answer.
I think we may have a few questions at this juncture, but as requested earlier also, please confine yourself to questions. We do not want any remarks or observations at this juncture, please. Directly on to the question to be answered by Ravikiranji.
சார், இந்த விவாதி ராகத்தில் இந்த ரீ2வும் கா1ம் ஒன்று, தா2வும் என்1ம் ஒன்று தானே? அவ்வளோ அதே தானே? அதான்
The ragams which have these notes, the Shatshruti Rishabham, Shatshruti Devatam, Shuddha Gandharam and Shuddha Nishadam are considered Vivadi. Because if you are having those notes, now if you are having Shatshruti Daivatam, the immediate note can only be Kakali Nishadam. It will never be Sa. You will never have Shatshruti Daivatam that skip Ni and then go to Sa. Puridilaya. So it has to be by definition the next semitone and then immediately the next semitone. So அந்த ஒரு கைண்ட் ஆஃப் எஃபெக்ட் வந்த உடனே அது விவாதி ஆகிடுறது. இதே மாதிரி உங்களுக்கு சுத்த காந்தாரம் அப்படின்னு வந்ததுன்னா சரி க அப்படின்னு வந்தால் the previous note can only be Shuddha Rishabham. You cannot have Sa to Ga directly and then call it Shuddha Gandharam. If you do that, then it's just Re only. It's still Chatushuddha Rishabham. Sari pamare saneda sari saraswati namostute pamare sa. Whereas if you are doing the moment you have the same value there, and if you are going to have the Re, if it's going to be called Shuddha Gandharam, then it is immediately going to be one semitone below that and then another one semitone below that, which is going to be the way it is going to be structured. So on the notes vandadunale vivadi aidum adu, because there is no other go for the raga to progress in those kind of situations. Padani sa sani அப்படினு அந்த வந்து நிஷாதமா நம்ம நினைச்ச உடனே then you are only going to have the as the next note, same with da and ni basically. So அதனால தான் வந்து that becomes already vivadi raga. Now there is one more set of notes where you can have three semitones happening. Ma pada ne sari kakali nishadam shadjam shuddha rishabham is also only semitone apart. But there the middle note is sa in that case. So the sa will break that vivadi. The sa is actually such a harmonious consonant basic note that sa will never have the vivadi impact. That is why ragas like Pantuvarali, Maya Malagola and so many other ragams in that family will always never sound dissonant to you. அப்படின்னா வந்து உங்களுக்கு அது விவாதித்துவமே கேட்காது. So that is why those are not considered dissonant intervals at all. So this again I should also tell you, it's a very cultural thing. This is the Indian way of listening. We have been used to this kind of listening for so many years. In Western terms, the concept of dissonance is very different. நம்மளுக்கு வந்து actually sa to pa, sa pa is consonant. Sa ma is also very consonant for Indian ears. Whereas that sa to ma, the fourth, the perfect fourth is actually considered a dissonance in Western music. For their ears, that is considered dissonant interval actually. So for them, the best intervals are the ones which are separated by just threes. You know, sa, ga, ga, pa. So it has to be the alternate notes which are actually considered. The third interval is considered more consonant in Western culture. So the concept of vivaditvam, the consonance and dissonance sometimes can be very cultural also. So I was very surprised to find that when I was working with some of my Western colleagues. So they told me that this is more considered because some of the harmonies I had put, I thought that this will naturally be a nice thing for my ears. But because of the concept of Melharmony, which actually respects the aesthetics of the Western system also, immediately some of my colleagues immediately told me, no, that may not work so well for this. So this concept of consonance and dissonance is very, very cultural sometimes.
Regarding Sajjamam and Pancham, they are supposed to be Achalam, that is, there is no shake, Satyam. But there are musicians who give a tremolo effect when they land in the Panchamam, and they try to, when I try to argue with them, they say, after all, the 7 notes are born out of Sajjam, so what's wrong in shaking? It's not that they are trying to go to the Rishabham from Sa or to Daivadam from Pa. They are just standing on the Pa and shaking it. Would you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, basically, technically speaking, that is not something that is, what should I say, desirable. You should be able to, not only Sajjam and Panchamam, there are certain immovable notes in other ragas. Now, for example, the Gandharam of Shankarabharanam should be like that. Dabagare அப்படின்னு இப்போ ஒரு கீரவாணியில் பாடித்தினாலும் சரி, அந்த re should be totally, absolutely still. Okay, so there are a lot of still notes, even otherwise, which are non-sa and pa. But sa, pa especially, we should try and hold it still, because the hold pandradhukku still it's also a question of lot of voice culture. You have to be, you have to stay on the note, practice just holding the note with total stillness. The stillness includes not only the voice stillness, it also means keeping your mind very still. And அதை நிறைய ப்ராக்டிஸ் பண்ணி you have to keep internalizing that to gain that stillness in your mind. இப்போ மிஞ்சி பையது நொஞ்சி மிஞ்சி பையது இந்த பாலாம் நீங்கள் பாடினீங்கன்னா அப்படியே ஸ்டில்லாக தான் கேட்கணும். அதில் எது தம்பூரா எது நம்ம வாய்ஸ்ன்னு தெரியாத அளவுக்கு அதை ப்ராக்டிஸ் பண்ணி we should be able to feel no insecurity in holding those notes. The moment we feel that insecurity, we'll end up shivering slightly or involuntarily or sometimes even voluntarily to just, our mind will actually command our body, say, do something there so that you are not shooting yourself on the foot. And then you can always call it stylistic sometimes. But that said, let me also say that stylistically some artists have favored doing that in some places. Now, for example, இப்போ லால்குடி ஸ்கூலில் நீங்கள் பார்த்தீங்கன்னா அந்த நாஜீவதாரெல்லாம் பாடிச்சு அந்த பாவை கொஞ்சம் ஒரு they'll give a deliberate intentional tremolo. இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு tremolo they have given sometimes. That, if it is not overdone, it can be considered stylistic, because Lalgudi sir had proved himself that he could also hold any note still. So you see, if it's a person with a proven track record who has done this like 99 out of 100 times and just 1 out of 100 times, if he's going to do a little bit of the thing for emotion or this kind of thing, then it can be considered stylistic. The thing is, default-ஆவே அப்படி தான் வந்ததுன்னா அப்போ சாரீரத்தில் தான் கொஞ்சம் ஏதாவது இருக்குது, இல்லை சரீரத்தில் ஏதாவது இருக்குது, அந்த மாதிரி தான் நம்ம நினைக்க முடியும். So you should be able to really hold those notes very still. You should be able to create the silence. The key is that if you are not still, you cannot create silence. So a good artist is actually judged by the ability to create silence in sound and sound in silence. You understand this concept? The highest music is that. It is the ultimate Advaita Bhava of music, the ultimate truth of music. The very purpose of music is that ability to be able to create sound in silence and silence in sound. So நீங்கள் ஒரு silence கொடுத்தீங்கன்னா that music should still be there in that silence. And in the music itself, you should be that is where the concept of tone, the way in which you give the voice, வாய்ஸை கொடுக்குற அழகு, நம்ம வந்து மீட்டர் அழகு, போ பண்ணுற அழகு, ப்ளோ பண்ணுற அழகு எல்லாமே வந்து ஞானம். ஞானம் இஸ் தட். ஞானம் இஸ் டோன். ஹவு யூ கிவ் டோன். கஜவதன கருண சதன கஜவதன கருண சதன சங்கர பல லம்போதர சுந்தர கஜவதன கருண சதன. இதுவும் மியூசிக் தான். எவ்ரிதிங் இஸ் டியூன்ஃபுல், rhythmically tight, grammatically perfect and everything. But that anubhava of that will be very different from கஜவதன கருண சதன சங்கர பல பல லம்போதர சுந்தர கஜவதன அப்படின்னு படிச்சு அந்த டோனில் வந்து நீங்கள் வந்து ஆக்சுவலி யூ ஆர் ஏபிள் டு கிரியேட் லிட்டில் மோர் சைலன்ஸ் தேர். யூ சி தட் சைலன்ஸ் இஸ் த கீ. And that is what is refinement. Refined artists will be able to sing very busy music but still be able to create that. So other than the voice, the way that some of it comes, part of it is tuition, but much greater part is intuition. And adula vandu intuition you have to develop only. You cannot, even intuition can be developed. It's still a product of a lot of experience, a lot of introspection. It should be like a non-stop 24-hour channel inside your brain. Whatever else you are doing, one part of your brain should always be running music in the background. Only then you can start even being aware of these aspects. So otherwise what will happen, we can spend even 7-8 decades of practicing music without actually being aware of these aspects. அந்த லூ அதில் வந்து நம்ம மைண்டு ஃபுல்லாக வி ஆர் ஸோ ப்ரியாக்குபைட் லூ அப்படின்னு வந்து the pep of the loo is so thrilling for us even at the age of 75. That means we are not evolved from somewhere like 5th or 6th grade அப்படின்னா. அது அந்த ஏஜில் தான் அதுக்கு ஒரு பெப் இருக்கணுமே தவிர usually all these odikal things is all, it should become part of sarvalagu. It should all look like samam to you when you are doing this. So Sharavana Bhava Shiva Guru Bharane Shanmugane Gugane Valli Devagane Manalane Tirumurugane Sharavana Bhava Shiva Guru Bharane Shanmugane Gugane Valli Devagane Manalane Tirumurugane Sharavana Bhava Shiva Guru Bharane Shanmugane Gugane. இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு பல்லவி நான் இப்போ பாடிட்டு இருக்கேன். இது ஆக்சுவலாக வந்து வாட் ஐ எம் டூயிங் இஸ் எல்லாமே 7 தள்ளி வரும். இது தக்க தீமி தக்கிட்ட சரவண பவ சிவ குரு பரனே சண்முகனே கு வள்ளி தெய்வகனே மணயலகனே திருமுருகனே சரவண பவ சிவ எல்லாம் வந்து ஆஃப் த பீட். 7 out of 8 எல்லாம் நெருப்பில் விளையாடுற சமாச்சாரம் ஆக்சுவலாக. பட் ஆனால் அந்த நெருப்பில் விளையாடுறது வந்து அப்படி ஒரு சில்லாக இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு ஃப்ராப்பே அப்படி ஜம்முன்னு கூல் ட்ரிங்க் குடிக்கிற மாதிரி ஒரு எஃபெக்ட் பண்ணிடும். யா, எனி கொஸ்டின்?
ஃபார் a general listener, the stage of saturation, when saturation happens for the listener, is the problem of the listener or the performer?
Both actually. See, the main thing is the state of mind of the listener can sometimes be very different from the performer. நீங்கள் வந்து ஆல்ரெடி சீசனில் வந்து ஒரு 10 கச்சேரி அப்போ தான் வந்து கேட்டுட்டு லாஸ்ட் 3 days if you heard 10 Kalyanis and you come to this other artist who is singing fantastic out of the world Kalyani also, you would have already felt saturated just listening to so many Kalyanis. ஐயோ again இது கல்யாணி, இதுக்கு கல்யாணே தேவையில்லை அப்படின்ற ஒரு ஃபீலிங் நம்மளுக்கு வந்துடும். ஸோ அந்த மாதிரி ஒரு சுச்சுவேஷனில் we cannot account for that at all, because now I have seen this happen several times. Somebody would be singing a fantastic அபராத முல்லன்னையோ மன்னிஞ்சி அப்படின்னு ஏதோ ஒரு பட்னம் சுப்பிரமணியர் பாடின ஒரு சாங். அவர் எந்த ஒரு கில்ட் ஃபீலிங்கில் பாடினார், என்ன வச்சு பாடினார் அப்படின்னு நம்மளுக்கு ஒன்றும் தெரியாது. ஸோ சப்போஸ் யூ ஹவ் ஜஸ்ட் won some major Nobel Prize or something, you are not going to be feeling very identifying yourself with that particular song at that time. You would rather do Dasarathi Neeru Namu Tirpathatarama kind of a feeling you will be having. So that kind of the mental wavelength of the listener sometimes can very much have its own impact. Yeah, I think, having your gurus and, guided good friends as Vidwans, I mean, who are good Vidwans also, who can actually sit with you and actually say, see in this place what this artist is doing, see how this raga is being developed here, how this composer has brought out the very essence of this raga in the very first place. These kind of things, if somebody is able to be, giving you that kind of guided listening sessions, it's going to be phenomenally enriching. This is one of the things actually. the how to improve our listening skills அப்படின்ற ஒரு டாபிக் வந்தால் ஒரு 4-5 very important point for listeners. The first and foremost is open mind. Okay, nothing to beat that actually. Any concert you should go with it absolutely open mind first to start with. And second thing is repeated exposure. So some styles of music may be instantly appealing. Some other styles of music may have more take-home value. So there are kinds of music. A good artist should really have both. He should also have instant appeal and take-home value. And that means your content should be very strong, your delivery should be also very good, very strong. But give that artist at least 2-3 exposures. Just listen to it at least 3-4 times, because you can actually, your taste may catch up with their level sometimes, if it's a good artist. And then the third is, of course, you have to really go by experts' opinion. Sometimes if they are very good friends that you have, then try to listen to their views on this. Go enter into some discussion. Now what is the difference between, say, Ahiri and Ghanta, for instance? How do I separate the two? Sometimes the compositions can help you. The first line of the composition, if the artist is taking that, you will be able to identify with those kind of things. So some of these factors, and I personally have found that for non-Carnatic listeners, listening to instrumental music first is always a better option, because they'll be able to be totally free from the language and other barriers that come into play, and so they'll be able to appreciate the music more for the pure melody and rhythm, and then probably be able to graduate to listening to vocal music and all that later on. So these kind of things are very... So the guided listening, in fact, I have recommended a lot of gurus to do that with their students also. Not only general listeners, but even students should be having a lot of guided listening sessions. The more you are able to listen to great masters, the more you are able to listen to great masterpieces. These are the two ways in which you can really go up as listener. And a good guide as a listener will also be able to tell you, okay, now that you have listened to this level of music, I'll give you this particular audio. Why don't you listen to this artist and see how this works for you? So andamari gradually that guide should be able to take you from that Gopuram to the Sanctum Sanctorum. So overall, over a period of time, that's a fantastic journey that both can share.
You also have a very strong conviction about the typical concert format that has been evolved, and you are one of the persons who really follows it. And you've always, I think, also agreed the point that we need not be different really to prove ourselves, but try to delve deeper into what is already there with us. So in this context, could you highlight the science and aesthetics of the concert format which has been handed down to us, and how it works well with different kinds of audience?
Yeah. See, the main thing is I always make this distinction between default and exceptions. Okay. There can be exceptional days in which you are doing something different. If you are, motivated purely by internal compulsion with no other agenda. So that is a different thing. But in general, the concert format in the pre-Ariyakudi Ramanjayanga days, when you had concerts of people like Mahavaidyanatha, Shivan and others, the typical concert itself used to be sometimes 5 hours, 6 hours. In fact, they used to actually start the concert from 4 o'clock, then take a break for Sandhya Vandanam, then come back and then continue the concert. Ippadiyella nadandirukku concerts. And in those days, they probably used to render only some 3 or 4 songs, as opposed to what has later become the trend. So in those kind of situations, it was a different ball game altogether. So they would dwell very deep into the raga and keep doing that kind of thing. But later on, the concert format started getting more and more at tune and at pace with the times and the changes. So then what happened is the duration itself started coming down to 3 hours, 2.5, 2, இப்போ வந்து முத்ரா மாதிரி 4-hour கான்சர்ட் ஸ்பெசிஃபிக்காக தீம் வச்சா தான் வந்து 4-hour கான்சர்ட் அப்படின்ற கான்செப்டே இருக்குது நம்மளுக்கு ஜென்ரலாக. இல்லைனா வந்து மோஸ்ட் ஆஃப் த டைம்ஸ் வி ஆர் fine with 2-hour, 2.5-hour concert. But Ariyakodi's formula at that time was to try and give a little bit of everything to every kind of listener, because his idea was that you have to do justice to the listeners of different tastes. So he will have a variety of musical forms, and he will have a variety of tempo, a variety of talas, variety of composers, variety of language, a variety of types of improvisation, variety of themes. So that was his mainstay. So he was more a visionary. So his contribution was this envisioning of also the shortening of attention spans. இப்போ ADD எல்லாம் வரதுக்கு முன்னாடி அவர் வந்து ADD எல்லாம் வரும் அப்படின்னு ஆட் பண்ணிட்டார் அவர் ஆக்சுவலாக. ஸோ அந்த ஆட் அவர் முன்னாடியே பண்ணிவிட்டு இந்த மாதிரி வரதுக்கு சான்ஸ் இருக்குன்னு அவர் ஒரு ஃபார்மேட்டை எவால்வ் பண்ணார். ஸோ வாட் ஹேப்பன் தேர் இஸ் that you will start with something like a Varnam, which is a different musical form. You have a very beautiful variety there. And the advantage of Varnam, a lot of people think it's a warm-up thing. Real artists will actually warm up a lot in the house and then only come on the stage. They won't actually use the stage to warm up. So, it's actually a fantastic piece by itself to warm up the audience. Because edutha udane ungalku oru tempo beautifully build agum. அப்படின்னு ஒரு பஞ்ச் ஓட நல்லா பாடித்தேன்னா the Varnam will actually lift up the concert immediately. So that is a fantastic start. அதுவும் வந்து lot of people would not sing Thana Varnam in 2 speeds and all that in those days. If you see, எல்லாம் மத்தியம காலத்தில் தான், மத்தியம கால பிரதானியமாக வந்து they were doing this. Most of they were operating within this range of மத்தியம காலams. So then you have a couple of fast-paced kritis, of which at least 2 or 1 of them will have some little bit of alapana, neravel, and then swarams, like say Aparama Bhakti. Typically, many of these artists, if you look at good concert lists of say GNB, Sammangudi Srinivasayar and all that, you will see the third piece will inevitably be a Purvi Kalyani or Pantuvarali or some such bright option, which will actually liven up the concert and also add a lot of pep exchanges between the voice and the violinist, and which the mridangam and others will be keeping pace with. So if you have those kind of lightning fast bullet rounds of Neravel or Kalpana Swarams happening, then the whole audience will be coming with you in that, the whole concert will be built up. Then immediately there will be contrast with some Shama Sastri Kriti and some Mishra Chapu or something, which will actually bring a different kind of atmosphere into the song, into the concert. And sometimes they would render a Pancharatna Kriti at the very beginning of the concert, either as a first piece itself instead of a Varnam, or as a second piece. And many times the first piece or second piece could also be a Vinayaka Stuti, just as a religious offering to Vinayaka and so forth. So then immediately they will again probably have another short piece, followed by what you can now fashionably call as a sub-main or something, whatever technical name you want to give it. They'll have an elaborate piece, like say Shri.Chitravina Namaste, or a Koniyadi Nanapai, or a Enduku Pedala, or Akshalinga Vibho, and this kind of thing, where you are actually having a lot of scope of all the kinds of improvisation, except probably Tanam. And you will also have Tanya Arthanam in that if the Mridangist so chose to do. So then you may probably have another short piece as a contrast, as a filler, before you actually went into Ragam Tanam Pallavi, which by means in those days was not just a filler piece. It was still treated with good respect. It was not just another lip service composition most of the times. So you will have so many varieties of Pallavis depending on the artist's style and preference. Alathur brothers' Pallavis would be more Laya-centric, whereas Ariyakudi Ramanjangar would probably try to do more some Ragamalika Pallavi or this kind of other things. So then you had a bunch of varieties of shorter pieces, miscellaneous pieces in different languages, either some Tirupavai or Javalis or Padams and Tillanas, sometimes Kavadi Chinde and all that, depending on the artist's preferences again. Or pieces of other composers, regional composers like say Purandaradasa or Subramanya Bharatiyar and so forth. So you had this kind of variety, balance and proportion. That was the Carnatic formula. And now if you look at improvisation, you will have all the kinds of improvisation, right from Raga Alapana to Tanam to Neravel to Kalpanaswarams and Taniyavartanam. So pure melodic improvs to pure rhythmic improvs. So everything the concert structure was intended to have as a complete package. So I personally have seen this concert formula work globally. If I play a concert in Chicago, or if I play it in Melbourne, or if I play it in Los Angeles, or if I play it in some Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, still the same concert formula without even compromise. I can still play the same Nayaki, I can play the Edukula Kambudi, I don't have to compromise on the values, the core values or beauties of Carnatic music in order to sell the system. So, it's a fantastic system which has everything for any kind of listener of any age group, from any background, from any country. So that's the beauty of the Carnatic formula. So, there are times when an artist may actually feel like starting a concert with, say, a Shama Shastri Swarajati. That can be an exceptional day. So there's nothing wrong in that if the real mood is from inside yourself. So there is no other agenda other than your own expression of your particular mood on a given day.
Talking about Anubhava, in the Hindustani style you said it's a slow-paced thing, and in Carnatic it's more verbose. But if you took two identical ragas...
please come again. Please repeat yourself.
The Hindustani style you had described as starting off slow and squeezing out the essence initially, whereas the Carnatic style is more rapid, relatively. But if you took two ragams with identical swaras, for instance Hamsadhvani, which is called the same in Hindustani as well as Carnatic.
It was actually borrowed from Carnatic.
True. Yeah. Or Mohanam or Bhoop in Hindustani style, the Anubhavam that you get is very different. How do you explain that?
No, the main thing is actually, if you were to go a little deeper into that, if you listen to the same Hamsadhvani by 10 different artists in Carnatic itself, you may get a different Anubhavam. It's a stylistic thing. But that said, for example, if you are having a Jugalbandi of, say, Carnatic and Hindustani, then you will have a different contrasting approaches by the two different artists, unless one actually wants to merge into the approach of the other. Typically, the Hindustani artists' approach to the Hamsadhvani, kind of thing, they'll keep trying to do that kind of phrasings. But the Carnatic artists need not do that. You can still bring that same kind of feel, but with a different contrasting color over there. So the Anubhavam that the good listeners will actually be able to experience there is two classy approaches to the same thing over there. Even though the notes are same, it's like English being spoken by different countries with different accents. So, you can have written by different authors of different countries. So you have a different approach to that language, right? The way an Indian author of English writes will be very different from the way a British author writes, as opposed to an American or a South African or an Australian writer. So it's the same language handled in different ways. And often when I play with good Hindustani artists, we will be very comfortable with each of us showing different facets of the way in which the notes are approached. One thing that the Hindustani artists and listeners sometimes do not relate to easily is the approximation in the name of oscillation. When you oscillate, if that oscillation is not, an oscillation need not always be tuneful. The oscillation is tuneful only dependent on whether we are precise with the range of that oscillation. We can't vaguely oscillate something and say this is like, gamakam and something. So that is something that they won't be able to relate to. So in the precision, even in the oscillation. So when you are doing this, you have to be precise in that range of oscillation, the limit of the oscillation. So that is something, if you are doing that properly, you can even, whether it's South Indian listener or Hindustan listener, both of them will be able to appreciate both systems nicely if it's handled by a classy artist.
The Rakti Ragam Pati Sonal, since you are also collaborating with international musicians in various forms, Pudusa Rakti Ragam na varthukku edha scope irukka? Already irukkiradhu irukku, but do you see any possibility of a new Rakti Raga?
See, the main thing is, it's quite possible that, some of the currently discovered ragas can develop more Rakti and, more they are explored by musicians and composers, they may be able to evolve their own Raktitva over a period of time. But typically, by my experience, the ragas which are most probable to have that Rakti, if you see the current crop also, they are either Janyam of Kharagarapriya, Harikambodhi or Shankarabharanam, 99%. Sometimes you have Janyams of Nadabhairavi, sometimes you have Janyams of, say, Maya Malagola, and sometimes you have a total exception in something like, say, Varali and so forth. Otherwise, typically they only form within this Janyams cluster. The Rakti Ragams are always in this cluster of these ragas. You don't find a Janyam of some of the other ragams which are more Swara based. If the Melakarta itself is more a Swara based kind of thing, then you don't find too many Rakti Raga possibilities in those. There are more exceptions. You can actually, it's the artist's hands to be able to bring the Raktitva even in an Amrita Varshini. Kind of thing, if you are able to do, you can bring that Raktitva in Amrita Varshini instead of just jazzing up. Similarly, you can even jazz up a Begada or Dhanyasi if you feel like it. This is something in our this thing. But some of the ragas which are having just straight sequences, most of the Rakti ragas, if you see, they'll have some Vakra Prayoga inbuilt into that, which adds to that, literally a twist in the tail, so to speak. So, those kind of things add to that appeal. And in this context, if you see, even a couple of days back when we were talking about it, many of the newly discovered ragas are more straight scale-oriented explorations rather than bhava-oriented things. And if you also look at it, many of these ragas which are considered Rakti ragas now evolved many centuries back. So there have been some cases like Punagavarali, Akiri and all that, which were even much before, like say even 2000 years, when the Pan system itself, the Tamil music had some of these ragas. Similarly, you had other ragas which evolved later on. And some of our very, very popular ragas now were not that popular then, and some of those ragas which are popular then, like say Ghanta or Balakhamsa and all that, are now almost like vanishing species, which are more like, curiosities in some concerts. So it's a continuous, what should I say, kind of what I normally say, நம்ம மனுஷாளுக்கு எப்படிலாம் ஒரு சுக்ர தசை சனி தசை இதெல்லாம் இருக்கிற மாதிரி ராகங்களுக்கும் அந்த மாதிரி இருக்குது. ஒரு டைமில் ஒரு ராகம் வந்து அப்படி க்ரோ ஆகுது. பட் ரக்தி ராகாஸ் நம்ம டிஸ்கவர் பண்ணணும் அப்படின்னு ஒரு கம்பல்ஷன் இல்லை. பிகாஸ் இது இருக்கிற ராகம்ஸில் நிறைய so much to be explored still and bringing out the beauty.
But a ragam rakti nadayarthu because of the compositions which make it so, do you think?
No, actually, see, there are several aspects to it. One is the way in which the frequency, the combination of the frequencies, the notes, the way in which the notes are arranged. இப்போ நீங்கள் வந்து கனகாங்கியில் 100 பாட்டு பண்ணித்தினாலும் கனகாங்கி வந்து ரக்தியாக வந்து இருக்கிறது வந்து கொஞ்சம் கஷ்டம்தான். Because the way in which the structure of the frequencies are. So combination of frequencies has a major impact. Then the sequence of notes and the gamakas it can permit. Now for example, Re gama gama dasa dama gare gama gare sare dasa அப்படி நம்ம ஒரு ஆபோகி நம்ம பாடித்தனாலும் அதை கொஞ்சம் ரக்தித்துவத்தை நம்ம கொண்டு வர முடியுது because we are having that scope for oscillating some of these notes which typically give a fulfilling feeling for our listeners, right? So அந்த kind of feel வந்து artist's hand. இதே ஆபோகி you can just simply render it as a bunch of notes. இப்படியே நம்ம பாடித்தனா கூட ஆபோகி வந்துடும். ஸோ partly it's the artist and partly it's also the way in which the raga itself is structured. அப்படின்னா நம்ம naturally the way in which that raga and the way in which those phrasings, so typically a rakti ragam is one which can be on the table in just one or two phrases. It should not be like a suspense novel where only in the last phrase you are able to see the identity of the raga. அப்படி இருந்ததுன்னா அது பிரயோஜனமே கிடையாது.
The recent coverage of ongoing music session, I read in a review of 108 Melakarta Ragas. And I was intrigued. This was the first time I came across this. And I made some inquiry and heard that Suddhamamadhyam and Pratipadivam juxtaposed, and possibly Tanjavur Shankarayar had...
Tanjavur Kalyanaraman sir. Kalyanaraman sir had come up with that concept of Dvimadhyama Ragas.
What's your opinion on that?
No, opinion, அவருடைய innovation, அவர் பெரிய வித்வான், பெரிய thinker, intellectual. So it was his concept. Basically, instead of pa, he would use the Pratimadhyamam. So he'll have two Madhyamams. Sare ga ma ma da ni fa sa ni da ma ma ga re fa. Sare ga ma ma da ni sa sa ni da ma ma ga re sa. Kind of thing. That's a concept that he came up with. It suited his style of thinking, it suited his personality, so he was able to sing those kind of ragas. He was always fond of Vivadi Ragas in general. He used to be exploring in some of these territories even before in his earlier part of his career. And that probably set him thinking a bit, and he pushed the boundaries a little more by coming up with this concept. As a very smart composition for about 5 minutes in the middle of a concert, as an intellectual, statement, if it's rendered by a very good artist, then it can just sound as a contrast for some time. That is his contribution.
நமஸ்காரம். நான் வந்து ரொம்ப மியூசிக் கேட்க பிடிக்கும், பட் இவா மாதிரி ரொம்ப டெக்னிக்கலாலாம் தெரியாது. ஒரே ஒரு 15 வருஷமாக வந்துட்டுருக்கேன். இங்கே ஸ்டேஜில் வந்து ஆவரேஜ் ஏஜ் கம்மியாகிட்டுருக்கு, ஆடியன்ஸில் ஆவரேஜ் ஏஜ் அதிகமாகிட்டுருக்கு. அண்டு உங்களெல்லாம் சொல்லலை, நான் என்னை பற்றி சொல்லிக்கிறேன். இது வந்து ஐ ஹவ் சீன் மெனி சிம்ஃபனிஸ் அண்ட் அதர் திங்ஸ் அவுட் சைட் த கண்ட்ரி. அங்கெல்லாம் பார்த்துருக்கேன். ஸ்கூல் சில்ட்ரன்லாம் வருது, நிறையா கூட்டின்னு வர அப்பா அம்மாங்கெல்லாம். இங்கே எங்காத்து நெவ்யூவை கேட்டேன், இன்றைக்கி வரியாடான்ட்டு பெஸ்ட் ஆஃப் லக்ட்டு போயிட்டே இருந்தான் அவன். ஸோ அதான் தட்ஸ் வாட் இஸ் சார்.
எவ்வளோ வயசு அவருக்கு அப்போ?
அவன் 42 வயசு ஆகிடுது.
அதான் நீங்கள் வந்து ஒரு 4 வயசுலேருந்து கேட்டிருந்தீங்கன்னு வந்திருப்பார் அவர்.
கரெக்ட்.
மெயின் திங் இஸ் catch them young. The main thing is that taste has to be built from childhood. In fact, நம்ம கல்ச்சரில் வந்து அபிமன்யு அஷ்டாவக்ரா மாதிரியான பீப்புளெலாம் ஊம்புலேருந்தே வந்து பரம ஞானிகளாக பறந்துருக்கான்றதுக்கு அந்த வந்து ஒரு கல்ச்சரில் இருக்கிற நம்ம வந்து லேட்டாக ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணக்கூடாது. We all should expose the child right from the conception. முன்னாடி டைம்லேருந்து மியூசிக்கை போட்டு வீட்டில் வந்து அந்த நல்ல சவுண்ட்ஸு, ஒரு பாசிட்டிவ் எனர்ஜி, பாசிட்டிவ் வைப்ரேஷன்ஸ் have to be in the house.
I enjoy listening Carnatic music, okay, but I don't know anything about Carnatic music actually. So you are telling that if you can identify the raga, you can appreciate the Carnatic music better. Okay. So first of all, I want to know how to see. I want to enjoy the music more. Okay, I don't know anything about Carnatic music. Okay, how to start? So to identify the raga, it will give more. More enjoyment. Or how to start?
Abdina, if you hear that kind of set of notes as the first phrase, it is generally athana. So like this, there are certain ragas which are just defined by just one or two key phrases itself. You don't need the entire இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு கீ ஃப்ரேஸ் கேட்டதுன்னா இட்ஸ் only going to be எதுக்குள்ள காம்போது அப்படின்னா பேகடா. ஸோ இந்த மாதிரி few ragas you can just identify only by the key phrases. Some other ragas like Hamsadhwani and all that you can even identify just by the popular compositions. அப்படின்னா வந்து அந்த பேர் உங்களுக்கு தெரியலனா கூட இது வந்து வாதாபி ராகம் மாதிரி இருக்கே அப்படின்னு நீங்கள் ஒரு ஃபீலிங் வரும். So that's one more way in which, so if you keep listening more and more, suppose some other artist is singing Raghu Nayak, அப்படின்னா you'll still be able to see that it is Vatapi Ragam. Then you can ask your neighbor, இது பேர் ஏதாவது இருக்கா சார் என்ன சமாச்சாரம். So they'll be able to tell you that. So like this, you can develop your listening taste. That said, I've actually made this a point in my book also. In fact, one of the very first books on appreciating Carnatic music was by me in 1990s, which N. Ram and R.K. Narayan sir had proofread and published it. One of the very first in the whole world actually. In that itself I make one point, which is that you don't really need to know about something to appreciate that. For liking something, we don't need to know everything about it. Okay? Now if I look at Leonardo da Vinci painting, I don't have to really know anything about all the details that went into the painting, the kind of subtle colors he has used, what kind of, whether he was a Renaissance painter, whether he was a revolutionary painter, whether he was doing this and that, and all these things, I don't even need to know all those things. Just looking at it, just let the experience wash over you. You look at a beautiful temple, let it just, first you don't preoccupy yourself with whether it was built by Cholas or Pallavas or Pandyas or anybody else. Just look at the whole thing, just enjoy the whole experience of it. That's what Anubhava is about. Anubhava is about letting that experience wash over you. Just relax yourself and just see what it does to you. Once you like it, then you will want more information. That's when you will actually, your mind will want to know, okay, I would rather like to know more about who is this composer. The words, sometimes the words can give you that kind of Anubhava. It can give you either an evocative Anubhava, Urugada manamo Keturugada manamo எங்கள் ஊது குழல் நாதமுடு காதலுறவாகினவன் உள்ள முழுதும் கள்ளமல்லினவையும் கேட்டு உருகாத மனமென்ன. இந்த உருகாத மனம் என்ன மனமோ அப்படின்னு ஒரு கீர்த்தனத்தை நீங்கள் கேட்டிங்கன்னா யார் இந்த மாதிரி அழகாக லிரிக்ஸ் போட்டிருக்கா அப்படின்றது சொன்னி நெக்ஸ்ட் ஸ்டெப். You will first, if you identify with the thing that is already there, you are already experiencing the beauty of that. You are already identifying with that composer. The composer is able to communicate with you even across 300 years time span. And Arunaginathar is able to communicate with you even after about 500 years. Some Alvars are able to talk to you even after about 1000 years. Like this, that communication between that person and you, sometimes it can just be the mood of the raga. The raga could have been 2000 years older than us, but still it's able to create some timeless beauty in us, that experience. அதுக்கப்புறம் தான் அதனுடைய நேம், அதனுடைய பேரண்ட் என்ன சார், இதனுடைய திங்கெல்லாம் என்ன, ஆலைட் ராகாஸ் என்ன, ஆல் தீஸ் ஆர் ஸ்டாட்ஸ். ஸோ லெட் தட் எக்ஸ்பீரியன்ஸ் ஜஸ்ட் கம் ஓவர் யூ. அண்ட் தென் சம்டைம்ஸ் இட் குட் ஜஸ்ட் பி அ ஃபென்டாஸ்டிக் ஆர்டிஸ்ட் ஹூ இஸ் சிங்கிங். யூனோ, யார் இந்த ஆர்டிஸ்ட், என்ன பாடிட்டுருக்கா, இது பாடிட்டுருக்குது, ஸோ இவர் பாடுறது பல்லவியா, அனுபலவியா, சரணமா, இல்லை ராகமா, தானமா, அதெல்லாம் வந்து நெக்ஸ்ட் டெக்னிக்கல் திங்ஸ் யூ வில் ஸ்டார்ட். As you like it more and more, you will want to know more and more. So that knowledge sometimes need not lead your taste. You know, taste can take you towards more knowledge, and which in turn can actually lead you to better taste. This is what I call as the positive, instead of the vicious cycle, it's actually a positive cycle which can happen.
Just want to add as an experience, என்னோட பசங்களுக்கு வந்து இந்த லிஸ்னிங் சொல்கிறதுனால வீட்டில் நல்ல சங்கீதம் கேட்டு ஏஜ் ஆஃப் 4 or 5 வேகடானா வல்லபான்னு சொல்லிவிடுவா ஒரு ஃபர்ஸ்ட் லைன்ல, முருகா முருகா சாவேரி, அந்த மாதிரி என்னத்தவன் செய்தனே. as soon as they listen, அது வந்து எந்த பாட்டாக இருந்தாலும் if they are familiar with one song and the phrases, it was well said. I just want to share my experience.
That's how a lot of people, in fact, when my guru Chitravina Narasimhan sir taught me to identify some 300 ragas at the age of 2 and all that, it was not just by giving only stat after stat. அப்பா பாடுற அழகில் வந்து ஒரு 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 5 month 10 month ஓல்டு சைல்டும் திரும்பி பார்க்குற மாதிரி அப்பா பாடுவார் ஃபஸ்ட்டு. அந்த பாட்டினுடைய ஒரு அட்ராக்ஷன்லேயே ஈவன் த சைல்டு வில் பி ஸ்வேட். ஐ ஹவ் சீன் திஸ் ஹேப்பன் ஃபர்ஸ்ட் ஹேண்ட் இன் த கேஸ் ஆஃப் my brother or sister and my cousin Ganesh and all that. Because I was slightly older, I was able to observe how this process went on. Whatever happened with me, I don't even remember, of course. But the thing is, the way in which ultimately the artist has to compel that Anubhava. The artist's hands to compel, inspire the listeners into experiencing something. So, அதில் ஒரு நல்ல ஆர்டிஸ்ட் வந்து they will take that responsibility very, very seriously. The stage is not just a platform for entertainment. It's not just a platform to showcase yourself. It's not just it's not an exhibition that's happening here. A stage is a very sacred place. The moment you get on the stage, you have to actually take that responsibility very seriously, that you are not merely an entertainer, but you are also an educator, you are an elevator, everything built into one. That's what is fine art about. That's what a classical art is about. That's what a positive art is about. That's what Carnatic is about. Carnatic is one of the positive systems in the world. அது கேட்டதுன்னா உங்களுக்கு உடனே வந்து ஒரு டிஸ்கோவில் போயிட்டு இன்னும் கொஞ்சம் இருக்கிற இதெல்லாத்தையும் இது பண்ணி நம்ம டான்ஸ் ஆடி கொஞ்சம் வேறு ஏதாவது சாப்பிட்டு சூசைட் பண்ணிக்கலாம் அப்படின்னு தோணாது ஜென்ரலி. இன்ஃபேக்ட் there have been systems which have inspired people to do that. There have been people who have just committed suicide as a very response to something that they have heard. These are news items. I am not just exaggerating at all. There are confirmed news reports of such things happening in some countries. So, Carnatic is not like that. Adu kettaduna vandu either you feel like getting identifying with the beauty of the poetry, beauty of the sentiment, beauty of the mood of the ragas, or beauty of the lyrics that are there, or you feel like meditating, feel like doing some yoga, doing this kind of thing. So Carnatic is that kind of a kala, a vidya, something that is also a higher form of jnana, higher form of yoga, nada yoga. Everything is encapsulated and embedded in the whole system, if it is practiced and appreciated correctly. And that is what the artist as well as the listener should seek. When they come to a concert, when you all come to a concert, you should seek that. You should see whether the artists are able to provide you that kind of state of experience. That experience and the Anubhava அப்படின்றதுல வந்து ஒரு தியாகராஜ சுவாமி மாதிரி பீப்புளெலாம் வந்து எப்போவுமே வந்து they have stressed so much on the Swanubhava. The person has to feel that first, that artist has to feel that Anubhava, and then he should be able to also communicate it. When he's having a bunch of people here, he should be able to communicate that Anubhava, and sometimes there will be some magic moments in the concert where the whole hall is in with one wavelength. You can all be in different wavelengths at different times of this concert, but there could be few moments when all of you are in that one wavelength, and that is the kind of union of mind, body, soul, everything that is reached in that point. And those cannot be sustained over the 3-hour period. அது லைட்னிங் வந்து கண்டினியூஸாக 3 hours இருந்தால் அது லைட்னிங்கே கிடையாது இல்லையா, அது லைட் தான் அது. ஸோ அந்த மாதிரி அது. ஸோ நம்ம வந்து இப்போது நீங்கள் நிறைய தரம் பார்த்தீங்கன்னா lightning is often, it appears more brilliant than actually the sun itself. Even though lightning is far inferior in its luminous intensity compared to the sun. But sun எப்போவுமே அப்படியே இருக்கிறதுனால we take it for granted. Lightning வரைச்சது அந்த ஃப்ளாஷில் வந்தப்போ தான் we feel that experience. அந்த மாதிரி சில எக்ஸ்பீரியன்ஸஸ் அந்த ஃப்ளாஷில் இருக்கிறது தான் யூ வில் ஆக்சுவலி ஃபீல் தட். அப்போ தான் அந்த அனுபவம் அப்படின்ற ஒரு ஃபீலிங்கே வரும் நம்மளுக்கு. பர்பச்சுவலாக இருந்தால் இட்ஸ் ஜஸ்ட் டேக்கன் ஃபார் கிராண்டட் கைண்ட் ஆஃப் திங். ஸோ எவ்ரி திங் இஸ் how we are able to, with what frame of mind we come to a concert. We should not just come there just for some titillating experience of just இவ பாடி முடிக்கிறதுக்குள்ள ஆர்டிஃபிஷியலாக அவள் ஒரு கிளைமேக்ஸை பில்ட் பண்ணுறதுக்குன்னா நம்ம டியூட்டிஃபுல்லாக நம்மளும் கொஞ்சம் கிளாப் பண்ணி அவள் பாடி முடிக்கிறது அவளும் வந்து அதை பண்ணி முடித்து சரி வாட் எவர் தே யூஸ் டு கெட் கிளாப்ஸ் ஃபார் இன் 1980s is not bringing them claps, so they have to bang the mridangam even harder to get the same kind of effect and stay even higher on top of that high notes. பிளாக்மெயில் பண்ணி இந்த டிவி டவரில் ஏறி நீங்கள் வந்து இது பண்ணலன்னா நான் கீழே வர மாட்டேன் அப்படின்னு பிளாக்மெயில் பண்ணுற மாதிரி கிளாப் கொடுத்தா தான் கீழே அடுத்த நோட்டுக்கு வரேன் அப்படின்னு அங்கேயே காரையை கொடுத்து இந்த மாதிரி நீங்களும் அதுக்கெல்லாம் கிளாப் பண்ணி அந்த ஆர்டிஸ்ட்டை நீங்களும் வந்து கூப்பிட்டு ஸோ யூ ஆர் ஆல்சோ இன் டர்ன் டெவலப்பிங் த அனுபவா அண்ட் டேஸ்ட் ஆஃப் தட் ஆர்டிஸ்ட் இட் செல்ஃப். யூ ஆர் ஆக்சுவலி டேமிங் தட் ஆர்டிஸ்ட் இன் டு டூயிங் திஸ் கைண்ட் ஆஃப் திங்ஸ். And then, the artist is, in turn, he is also thinking that, okay, இது பண்ணி தான் எனக்கு மார்க்கெட் வரப்போகுது, என்ன எலிவேஷன்லாம் பார்த்துங்க, எனக்கு அப்ளாஸ் வந்தால் போகிறேன் சார் அப்படின்னு சொல்லி அவளும் ஸ்டேஜில் ஏறி இப்படி பாடினதுன்னா, then the whole thing is just, it's going to be on one plateau, never hit the peaks or depths of that art. So everybody's responsibility to take the art higher up and forward.
சார், நீங்கள் ஆரம்பத்தில் இந்த கைடட் மெடிடேஷன் மாதிரி கைடட் லிசனிங் அப்படின்னு சொன்னேன். நான் ஒரு ஃப்ரெண்டோடு போயிருந்தேன். அவருக்கு இது நல்லா தெரியும், எனக்கு அவருக்கு தெரியாது. அவர் பார்த்துட்டு கச்சேரி முடிஞ்ச உடனே, சார் நீங்கள் உங்கள் குவாலிட்டி ஆஃப் லிசனிங் நல்லா இருக்கு, நீங்கள் ஒன்றும் கற்றுக்க வேண்டாம், ராகங்க ஒன்றும் தெரிஞ்சுக்கிட்டு வேண்டாம், நல்லா என்ஜாய் பண்ணுங்க அப்படின்னு சொன்னார்.
எஸ், வெரி குட்.
இது கரெக்ட் தானே? அது இல்லை
அவர் சொன்னால் கரெக்டாக இருந்திருக்கும்.
இல்லை இங்கே நான் வந்து பார்க்குறப்ப
இல்லை, the point is that, see, as I told before, see, I have seen knowledgeable listeners. A knowledgeable listener is different from a perceptive listener. Okay, you don't have to be knowledgeable to be perceptive. Excellence can transmit no matter what. So you can be able to, some people may naturally be able to perceive excellence, perceive beauty, perceive quality, perceive taste, without actually having to know anything about that. இப்போ சில பேருக்கு நேச்சுரலாக பார்த்தா அவள் சாரீ செலெக்ஷனோ இல்லை ஒரு குர்தா செலெக்ஷனோ இது பண்ணி அது நேச்சுரலாகவே நல்லா இருக்கும் சில பேருக்கு. பட் சில பேருக்கு எவ்வளோவே இது இருந்ததுனாலும் சம்டைம்ஸ் தே மே நாட் பி ஏபிள் டு பர்சீவ் இட். ஐ கேன் ஆனஸ்ட்லி அட்மிட் ஹியர் இன் தி ஸ்டேஜ் தட் மை டேஸ்ட் பிகின்ஸ் அண்ட் எண்ட்ஸ் வித் மை இயர்ஸ். எனக்கு கண்ணில் வந்து இந்த பியூட்டி வந்து அதை வந்து நான் வேறு யாராவது சொன்னால் தான் இது ஓகே, இது தேவையாக இருக்குது போட்டுக்கிறதுக்கு அப்படின்னு அப்போ தான் தெரியும் எனக்கு. ஸோ மோஸ்ட் ஆஃப் த டைம்ஸ் திருப்பதி ஸ்ரீனிவாசர் மாதிரி யார் எனக்கு என்ன கொடுத்தாலும் நான் அதை போட்டு அவளுக்கு தரிசனத்தை கொடுத்துட்றேன். ஸோ perception can be, it can transcend knowledge.
I'm listening music from the childhood. Actually, I don't know any technical about it. But as I listen Carnatic, Hindustani, even Western, even anything I can listen completely. Even without, even 5 hours also I can sit. But in all the things, what I find is the Shruti is very, very important. See, that is a layam, the Shruti. There are so many Shruti box and tambura is available, but nobody worries about the Shruti. I am talking about the performing artist. But that is a very, very keynote, actually. I can understand, because as a layman, so it will be great injuries to the technical person, suppose. So what do you give your opinion about that?
No, there is no two opinions about it. Shruti is the key. The Shruti Mata Life Pita Abdina, it has been said so many times. And through the world, if you want to see the whole very fact, without beating around the bush, is that if you do not have your basics very strong, you will end up as just regional level artists. You will just be local or regional, that's all. You cannot even be national. Okay? And the system புரிஞ்சவாதான் வந்து அப்ரிஷியேட் பண்ணுவான். இப்படின்னு பாடினதுன்னா, என்ன ஒரு பிரில்லியண்ட்டாக பாடுறாரு சார், என்ன கல்பனை சார் அப்படின்னு சொல்கிறது வந்து அந்த ராகத்தை தெரிஞ்சவா ஒரு 4 பேர், அந்த சிஸ்டமில் இருக்கக்கூடிய அந்த திங்ஸ் அவள் தெரிஞ்சவா ஒரு 4-5 பேர் தான் அதை அப்ரிஷியேட் பண்ண முடியும். சம் நியூட்ரல் லிசனர் even across Vijayawada will not be able to appreciate that. Once you cross the border of south, you will not be able to do anything. You will be like nobody over there. So you need to really have very strong international yardsticks அப்படின்னா Shruti, Layam, the tone. These 3 are very important international yardsticks. That is why if you see the national level, if you see in the reckoning, most of the what we even consider and rave about as great voices, they are not national voices at all. They are all very regional voices. They are just only regional level stars, many times local. So, even they may be performing in Los Angeles or Melbourne or anywhere else, but it will be for South Indian, the particular niche audience only. If you want to be able to sway listeners from any part of the world, your Shruti has to be very strong. நம்ம ஸ்ருதியில் பாடி ஸ்ருதியில் வாசித்து இது பண்ணித்தனா தான் அந்த ஸ்ருதி உள்ளே தான் இருக்கணுமே தவிர சுற்றி பாடினதுன்னா சுற்றி பிரதட்சணம் பண்ணி அங்கே பாடினதுன்னா சா வந்து ஒரு ஜென்ரல் ஒரு ஓகே ஒரு நவகிரக விக்கிரகம் மாதிரி நம்ம வந்து அதை ட்ரீட் பண்ணி சுற்றி வந்ததுன்னா பிரயோஜனமே கிடையாது. So we have to really work a lot on basics, and once artists become slightly popular, their whole views change because they are so happy with the applause that they are getting from here that they are not even motivated to go further in the whole art. So what happens? எதுக்கு சார் அவா கேட்கணும், நம்ம ஒரு 4 பேர் தியாகராஜ சுவாமி அப்படியே இங்கே கேட்டு ரசிச்சதுனா போராதா அப்படின்லாம் வந்து ரொம்ப ஃபேஷனபிள் சவுண்டிங் ஸ்டேட்மெண்ட்ஸ் ஆர் மேட் சம்டைம்ஸ். But those are, okay, it will just be frogs in the well kind of a situation. If you want to really take Carnatic, make it global, make the whole world see the brilliance and beauty and sophistication and magnificence of Carnatic music, you have to have international yardsticks. You should reach international standards of excellence. There is no two ways about it. And the artists who have done that are the heroes of our system, the true ambassadors of the Carnatic system. They are the ones who have really made our system aware in the global terms. And they are the ones who really bring new audiences to the system. Because today so many listeners from so many different parts of the world come to our system. It's because of such heroes who have done that kind of hard work and taken our system, made it global and brought those audiences, brought those scholars, motivated them, inspired them to come and listen to Chennai Music Festival. So those are the people. So there are certain things. This said, let me also say, Shruti, Layam, basic tone, the voice, how we give the voice, how we do the instrumental bowing technique or blowing or plucking or mridangathila vandu and sollu podra alagu adula irukkudiya and dynamics, all these things are international. You don't need to know Carnatic to appreciate those things. Any listener in any part of the world can know whether you are in tune or not. But then, to satisfy Carnatic listeners also, you have to be very strong in the Carnatic gamakas. You should be very strong in the Carnatic key ragas, the core ragas, Ghana ragams, Rakti ragams, the Ranjaka ragams, everything you should be very strong. And you should be very strong in the repertoire of different composers. You should be very strong in pronunciation. You should be very strong in enunciation. You should be very strong in different kinds of manodharmam. You should be able to give a complete package of Carnatic music and satisfy core Carnatic listeners. So don't chase only global values and then play light kind of music. So we should be very strong in all these aspects, then still be very strong in the basics, the international yardsticks. Only then our system will be flourishing at its best. So we all have to make our choices and make sure that we are always in Shruti. Shruti is the most fundamental truth of music. So Carnatic listeners should really get critical about Shruti, voice and all this. நீங்கள் எதுக்கு வேணாலும் தலையை ஆடிட்டு இப்படி கேட்டுருந்தீங்கன்னா பிரயோஜனமே கிடையாது. Because then you are not motivating the artist to get better. You have to motivate the artist. You have to demand. You should be demanding listeners. You should just be discerning and demanding listeners. So that's something that you all have to do so that the artists are able to do even better. Only then we will also be motivated to keep on doing better and better.
Sir, today's youth get attracted towards pop music and Michael Jackson, but they are not that much attracted towards Carnatic music. What is the speciality of that music to attract youth? My first question. Second question, whether it is the same scenario in India I have seen, whether it is the same scenario throughout the world.
Actually speaking, that question has so many answers really. So it's a question with so many different, there are so many causes, so many reasons. Number one is that from what I have seen, the same Carnatic music is appreciated by children. I have played a lot for school children even in the US. In fact, I introduced Carnatic music to many of the American schools, not only by my own concerts and lectures, but also through their own school orchestras. So I created music for that the orchestras can play. So many of the orchestras are now able to play some compositions of Tyagaraja or Dikshitar or Oothikadu Venkatakavi and some of these other composers. So that is the macro level way in which our whole education system has been set. The way in which our system is set, the way we have, been focusing only on science, technology and this one and this conservative fields at the cost of actually wasting millions and millions of people's talent. Because when I conducted a camp for 31,000 rural children all over Tamil Nadu at the behest of Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan in 2006 or so, it was the first of its kind. And at that time, I saw that literally hundreds and hundreds of school children were not only interested and passionate about our music, but they were also talented enough in that. We We have not created a macro level structure in the education departments in our country to give them opportunities to start appreciating our system right from the beginning. Today, the same Facebooking, WhatsApping generation in the American schools, they are also as aware of Michael Jackson as they are aware of Mozart or Beethoven or Bach. How many of our school children even know existence of Tyagaraja or Dikshitar or something? They absolutely know more Ilayaraja than Tyagaraja. Nothing wrong in that. I have a great respect for all these great composers in film also. I'm not saying anything wrong about that. But the system is in such a way that we are not creating awareness, pride, passion in our own culture. So we need to start doing this. For this, the government has to step in, the central as well as state government. I have been lobbying for this with the Prime Minister. We had several meetings with even the previous government. I was in the committee for music education in schools, where I actually submitted a syllabus to be, enforced by the thing at the behest of the government. They wanted me to submit that. I was the only musician in that committee, and so I was very happy to do that. But that syllabus is now happily in some air-conditioned office in Delhi, so I don't know where. And now that the government has changed, I'm again trying to make some more efforts to sort of revive that project. God willing, sometime we'll see all that happening. So once you create that kind of a macro level structure, then at least literally in one stroke the government can bring in millions of children across in that system, of which a few thousands will start coming into the concert scene as listeners. Everybody need not become a performer, but you will have a lot more new audiences. The taste will be built, that scene will be set for that to happen. That is one thing. Second thing, parents have to really, as I mentioned earlier, catch their children much younger. You have to start developing the taste right from their time before they are born. And if you can start doing that, that will be another great addition. In the next probably even 10 years, you will see a huge exponential increase in the young listeners of our country. So that is one more thing. And then we all have to take pride and passion. We are such an apathetic, pathetic bunch of people as a culture that we always think something imported is always superior to what we have. So many times it's the same Carnatic culture which is actually globally respected. When I play the same concert in Germany or Switzerland or some other countries, children and adults of all age groups are able to appreciate the same music. I don't even have to compromise anything. So why not our own children? Why do we think that it's complicated? Why do we think that it is beyond us? Why do we think classical is inaccessible? And why do we think that popular is only accessible? These are all misconceptions. And everybody has a responsibility, not only the artists but also the listeners themselves has a responsibility. I came up with this formula of each one reach one. In 1990, I came up with this formula. I said, okay, each listener start getting a new listener, maybe from your workspace, from your colleagues or from your relatives, somebody. Start gifting them cassettes, tapes, some audios, do something. Start getting new audiences, bring somebody, get them a ticket yourself when you are buying a ticket, get an extra ticket, start bringing somebody new. And then after about 5-6 times, that person, out of at least 50% of those will become good listeners later on. So all this we all can do. If we work together, we can do a lot.
Sir, some of your concerts, I remember going into meditation. So can you talk a little bit about the role of silence and sound? You mentioned that a little bit, and also difference between the experience in an instrumental concert versus a vocal concert when it comes to the aspects like meditation.
Meditation is something that happens in the case of certain kinds of compositions. The way the artist's mindset is, if the artist is able to bring that kind of a feel. Now if you really look at some of Muthuswami Dikshitar's brilliant compositions, Dakshina Murte இந்த மாதிரி நம்ம வந்து அந்த ஃபீலிங் நம்ம வந்து if you are able to feel that stillness, the stillness inside us as we are rendering this, as opposed to the akara based approach of Tyagaraja, which creates a different kind of effect. So it's a more, so you cannot jazz up Dikshitar to Tyagaraja's it into it's all fine in one context. Sometimes if a great artist like Samangudu Srinivasa or somebody did it, it was beautiful to hear as a concert art form. But there is the Dikshitar demands something else, so you should also be aware of what the composer demands sometimes. So if you are able to meet the demand of the composer. Shri This is a composition of Oothikadu Venkatakavi which is equally meditative. So, Venkatakavi did not compose just fast-paced pieces alone. So, each composer may have composed in different styles. Now, Dikshitar's Vatapi Ganapatim is much more different kind of atmosphere. So, a good concert should have a proportion and variety of different types of composers for this reason only. You should be able to bring that evocative, sublime beauty like say Shyama Shastri's Mayamma in Akhiri. And you should be able to bring an what you call as the introverted meditative feel that Muthuswami Dikshitar specialized in. And you should also be able to bring a different kind of skill that Tyagaraja's compositions. So that's why the artist has to have this kind of skills in the first place. Then he should be able to change his mindset based on the kind of demands of a composer. And if that artist is able to do justice to that, and this really happens very routinely in Western classical. You know, you will not actually see somebody artificially jazzing up a composition there just to score some points. They'll actually try and play those passages the way they were composed, and they'll take pride only in that. Whereas, and in fact they will frown upon if you clap in some other wrong place and all that. Whereas we will be thrilled if they clap in some other place. Namble artificial edho panni setup panni clap pannitanaala we are pretty happy about that. So andamari kind of things, if you are not having, it's fine. And then coming to instrumental music, abstract listeners will find instrumental always more appealing. That's why instrumental is always global. So you know, any listener from even Czechoslovakia or somewhere is able to listen and appreciate instrumental beauty because there is no barrier there. There is no language, there is no religion, there is no region, there is no other cultural thing that comes in between the way of their Anubhava and the artist who is performing. That's why instrumental is always global. So typically, because those things are not there, I have seen in my own concerts, there will be so many people, some of them will be actually swaying to the beat of the music, some of them will be just sitting and meditating during the concert, some others will be listening formally just for the art part of it. So you have so many different kinds of listening experiences even among non-Indian listeners when you just have instrumental concerts. In Carnatic audiences, I personally recommend that, you know, just great gurus used to always tell us, if you want to be a good vocalist, learn some instrument. And if you want to be a good instrumentalist, learn vocal. Similarly, if you want to be a good listener, listen to both vocal and instrumental. Only then your listening experience will be complete. If you are just going to have mindsets about these things or mental blocks about all this, you are missing out on a lot of beautiful things. Some of the greatest instrumentalists who are like heroes in rest of the world, who are the real ambassadors of our music, they should be really appreciated a lot more by our audiences. Actually, even North India has a huge market for instrumental music of say somebody like Pandit Shiva Kumar Sharma or Hari Prasad Chaurasia or Ravi Shankar or Amjad Ali Khan or Ali Akbar Khan or Vilayat Khan and so many different artists. It's only in the south, especially Chennai, where a lot of preconceived notions happen. So I would recommend that at least 1 out of every 4 or 3 concerts you listen, try and listen to some instrumental music. You will start seeing the beauty of that. Similarly, when there is Taniyavartanam happening, don't think it is some kind of your cue for you all to go home or go have a cup of coffee and all that. It's very poor taste actually. We should really show respect towards the art, if not even the artists who are performing. You should never get up in between the concert. You should really, or in between the songs. In between songs you can go, but the Taniyavartanam is still part of the song. We should all remember that, respect that and appreciate that and show the responsibility and response to that art that's happening over there. Really sit and, if you start putting talam for 5 concerts in Taniyavarthanam, you will start really going more with the artist who is doing, you will start enjoying what they are doing. It will start becoming part of your bloodstream. So these are the ways in which we all have to, evolve as listeners.
One question in the present context, especially if you're so bogged up with star artists, that is, we lap up everything that they sing and we assume that it is good. Aniki kacheri nanna amirtholliyo iva paadina nanna irukku solittu ellarum crowd up endirukom. But beyond an artist, how does one enjoy the art? It can come from anybody. It can be a very insignificant artist also, but then the music can be great. So for people, Rasikas, not to just keep barging into star pullers and to make their spectrum broader, what is the tip you have to offer?
Yeah. Number one is, nothing wrong in appreciating star artists. The star artists became stars with some good quality in them. So there is nothing wrong in appreciating them. Okay? But one small test I always recommend for everyone is go listen to the artist live and then listen to the same concert, just the audio of it later on, and compare the response that you are able to find from the same artist. If that artist is able to give you the same kind of response when you are not visually seeing that artist, then that music is really actually music. If much of your experience, much of your Anubhava is on the stage, persona of the artist, the presence of the artist, or the kind of other factors which go into visual factors are going to affect your oral thing, then actually it is a music plus a lot of other things. So you have to see and judge for yourself if it's an up and coming artist. Just listen to the audio of that artist and see if that music is really attractive. That person is your star. That's all. As simple as that. Many times you have to only let the musical experience decide your taste. Not so many other factors which go into that. What is that artist talking about today? What is he going to, what kind of thing is he going to stir up from the pot kind of thing? All these are just extra things. The essential is whether the music can hold its own without any other external factor. So if you are able to really do that, then we are actually making good judgment calls over a period of time.
சுப்பிரமணிய வாத்தியார் பாடல்கள் திருப்புகள் எல்லாம் வந்து எந்த ராகத்துல பாடி கேட்டாலும் அது ரொம்ப பிரமாதமா இருக்கு. அந்த அனுபவத்தை அதை பத்தி கொஞ்சம்.
அது வந்து அது அப்படி இல்லை, அது அந்த ஆர்டிஸ்ட் எப்படி டியூன் பண்ணுற அழகும் இருக்கு. See, tuningiல் வந்து எப்படின்னா, if somebody else has composed the lyrics, you have to be very, very careful in tuning that. It's actually many times more difficult to tune somebody else's lyrics than to create your own compositions as a Vagyekara. Because அவள் என்ன மீட்டரில் எப்படி பேஸ் பண்ணி எப்படி அவள் அதை விஷுவலைஸ் பண்ணால் நம்மளுக்கு தெரியாமல் இருக்கும் சில டைம். திருப்புகழ்லாம் வந்து அட்லீஸ்ட் the meter is clear, obvious, because the way in which he said the lines are like that. Whereas in Subramania Bharatiyar's composition, many times looking at those lyrics, you may not be able to really tune it accurately in the way that he might have visualized. But நல்ல ஆர்டிஸ்ட் பாடுற அழகில் வந்து சில டைம்ஸ் அது நல்லா கேட்கும். அண்ட் அதுவும் வந்து அந்த ஆர்டிஸ்ட்டும் அந்த டியூனுக்கு உண்டான ஒரு ராகத்தை உணர்ந்து போட்டிருந்ததுனால தான். இப்போ வந்து ஒரு சேட் டியூனை வந்து அவர் சேட் ஒரு தீமை வந்து எடுத்து நீங்கள் ரொம்ப ஒரு கதன குதூகலா மாதிரி ஒரு பவுன்சி ராகாவில் போய் பாடித்துன்னா நல்லா இருக்காது ஆக்சுவலாக. ஸோ the artist should have done some homework to correlate the mood of the theme and the tune. ஸோ அப்போ தான் அது நல்லாயிருக்கும்.
நம்ம கர்நாடிக் மியூசிக்கில் வந்து இட் இஸ் ஆல் பியூர்லி சாகித்ய பேஸ்ட். Whereas in Hindustani concerts, they play some 2 or 3 ragas and round off with a gharana or a bhajan or something like that, and they round off. Can we do a similar thing in Carnatic music, sustaining some 1 or 2 ragas only and then sustain the same tempo?
No, see, as I was explaining just before, the approaches of Hindustani and Carnatic have become slightly different now. Carnatic has become, variety centric. So if you are just taking out a lot of the beautiful forms of Carnatic, there are Tirupugal, Javalis, Tillanas, Padams, and Tirupavai, so many compositions of great masters. So you're taking out a lot of those typical Carnatic excellent aspects will only detract from the concert. It's not going to add to that. As a thematic concert, I have played only Ragam Tanam Pallavi concerts, I have played only Ekaraga concert, just playing only one thing. All these things I have done as a thematic thing. But the default concert format that we are having is actually something that is very enriching. It's really very ennobling in its own way. So I would recommend what you are saying as a one-off thing once in a while is absolutely fine. So if you know, suppose a few hundred people feel exactly like you should take the lead to organize a thematic concert like that and then request the artist to do like that. Then they'll be able to do that for that particular set of listeners who feel similarly. But if you take the majority of Carnatic listeners, they prefer a kind of a variety in that concert format, right? So it will actually be better for those people also to be taken into consideration when you are actually rendering a concert.
I'm sincerely thank Maestro Chitravina Shri Ravikiran ji for that enlightening session on Sangeetha Anubhavam. As we were also discussing, it's really a very, very wide spectrum of a topic, but he has really triggered our thought process on many issues, and as he said, it not only have entertainment value, but also take-home value. So there's been a lot of take-home value in the wonderful session that he's offered. So let us go back home and probably think more deeply about what he has said so that we get to discover something much more from that. Once again, I sincerely thank you for that wonderful session and for sharing your valuable thoughts. May I request Mr. Mudra Bhaskar to please honor him.